Good evening, everyone. I am CA Hemant Kumar Moore, moderator of today's webinar. Before starting today's session, I would like to appraise all of you about the 21st World Congress of Accountants, which is going to be held for the first time in India from 18th to 21st November 2022. I hope and I'm sure most of you would have already registered yourselves for the event. But to know more about this, I would like to request our technical team to play a short informational video. Please say this and register yourself for the same.
Geographically, the seventh largest country in the world, one of the oldest civilization, world's sixth largest economy, a global hub for innovation with one of the largest startup ecosystem. India, city of Mumbai on the western coast of Arabian Sea, among the most advanced and modern metropolises in the world, and the financial capital of India, gears up to host the most prestigious accountancy event of the world, 21st World Congress of Accountants from 18th to 21st November 2022, an event held every 4 years. The Olympic of Accountancy Profession. India hosts the event for the first time in 118 years since the WCOA came into being in 1904. Around 10,000 delegates expected to join virtually. More than 6,000 delegates from over 135 countries would congregate to exchange views at the world's most advanced Geo World Convention Center. The theme, Building Trust, Enabling Sustainability, will inspire the future of accountancy profession to create sustainable economies for the future.
The ICAI is honored to be the host for this mega event, which will bring together the world's largest conglomeration of professional accountants, regulators, leaders, and visionaries to advance the cause of the global accountancy profession. Now, with the ease of travel restrictions across the world and the situation returning to normal, we are working towards creating a never before and a unique experience for all our delegates. The year 2022 marks the 75th year of India's independence, and the Government of India is celebrating the year in a big way to showcase the glorious history of India. World Congress of Accountants 2022 would also be celebrated as a mega event to showcase the important role that the accountancy profession has been playing in the economic and social development of the country.
A never before witnessed unique experience of learning future trends, emerging avenues, enhancing skill sets, networking, and to explore the incredible India awaits you.
We at ICAI are pleased to host you here in Mumbai, the financial capital of India, for the 21st World Congress of Accountants with the theme Building Trust, Enabling Sustainability from November 18 to 21, 2022, and give you a professionally enriching and personally rejuvenating experience. We are hopeful that the conference shall be stimulating and productive, and your stay in India will be a memorable experience. Once again, we invite you for this enthralling convergence in India, the land of multicultural, historical, and spiritual inheritance since centuries.
Insights from the stalwarts of the profession, international and national standard setters, regulators, and trendsetters will constitute the panel of speakers at WCOA 2022. Let your dream get bigger. Come, be a part of this mega celebration. For registration and sponsorship opportunities, contact. Organized by Institute of Chartered Accountants of India under the aegis of IFAC.
I am delighted to welcome you all to the webinar being organized by the Committee on Economic, Commercial Laws and Economic Advisory of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. It is my pleasure to be a moderator for this session on webinar on human resource management and labor laws. Before we start the webinar, I would like to say a few words about this so important committee of our institute, CECLEA. The committee, in line with one of the institute's objectives, partners in nation building, and with a vision to contribute to the economic development of India, aims to undertake such activities to technically equip and broaden the scope of expertise of the members, to enable them to derive advantages in the rapidly changing scenario, and to enable the members to render various business advisory and support services. Now, this is a series of seminars. This is the concluding day. Since the last 3 days, we had the privilege, and we still have the privilege of listening to an expert on the subject of human resources. For the past few days, the topic on the day one was setting up robust HR department and policies. The second day was payroll processing. Yesterday, the third day was HR audit and how to be the best employer in the world. And today's topic is training and development of human resources. So once again, we have amongst us Sri Kevin Dias, today's learned speaker, who has a rich and diversified experience in the field of human resources and will once again share his knowledge with us. It's my privilege to once again introduce Kevin sir to all of you. He is professionally qualified with an MBA in HR and a degree in law, both from Mumbai University. His rich and diversified experience in the field of human resources spans over 25 years across various industries such as manufacturing, retail, engineering, and ITES. He has experience in growing and managing complex large workforce of more than 150,000 employees. His expertise in people strategy, acquisition, development and management, HR policies, reward and benefit, HR digitization, governance, integration, compliance, employee relations, global mobility, employee relations, inclusion and diversity, employee experience, wellness, and HR transformation has enabled organizations to be more competitive. With these few words, I request Kevin sir to take over the proceedings. And as usual, sir, since the participants have joined through separate online platform, queries may be taken in the last 15 minutes before closing of the session. Kevin sir, please start the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much once again, Hemant ji, and also once again, thank you to the Committee on Economic, Commercial Laws and Economic Advisory as a part of the ICAI to have me here for these last 4 days. I hope in these 4 days, I've been able to give each one of you a peek into what HR and HR practices and functions are all about. I said this on day one, and I repeat one more time that I am truly humbled because for each one of you who have joined today, for you all to have taken time to understand and even come into understanding the area of human resources itself is a big step. So thank you so much for doing that, and I salute each one of you. So today's topic is on training and development. Now, as a topic, it is pretty vast, and there are a lot of elements that are there that come into the whole gamut of training and development. Different organizations, medium and large and small, have used training and development in their own way, in their own style. But one thing is common, that it cannot be ignored and has to be a part of the fabric as you as an organizations are growing, whether it is your own CA practice or you are guiding organizations on their path towards growth. So training and development is a very integral part. I'm gonna say one statement here before I get into my presentation. A lot of organizations have over the period debated the point saying that should I actually expose employees to different types of concepts and trainings, and then that person leaves and goes to another organization and that organization benefits. But let me say this to you, that it is better to have trained a resource while working in your organization, because you have got that skill working for you as an organization on the growth path that your organization is deriving. Yes, you are adding value also to the individual while you are adding value to the organization. So I think it is more important to look at training the employee to build whatever you have got envisioned for yourself as an organization, rather than worry about the fact that this training person will leave and go and that training goes to somebody else. It is also a lot of progressive organizations look at this as being able to also add value to an employee. See, at one end, we talked about right at the start, the HR department, and we realized that money is good to get the person in the door, but it is not enough to keep the person within the door. So what are the various things that happen? And we talked about performance management. We talked about a great place to work. And in that, we talked about assessments, and we talked about reward and recognition. We talked about variable pay and different types of long-term bonuses, etc., to keep the employee happy, engaged, and focused in the work. One of the key other elements that get into this particular area is training and development. So it has a dual purpose. The first is in line with where the organization wants resources to get knowledge and drive the organization. And the second is adding value. Because also remember that when you train, employee is adding value to the company. Similarly, like that, you are adding value to the employee. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, I hope everybody is able to see my presentation. Okay. So training and development. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to take this topic, and instead of going in, there's some parts and some concepts that I think it's important for you to know. But instead of going into the traditional way, I would rather like to touch upon certain key areas, certain new aspects, to give you an exposure of how training and development impacts certain areas and what you need to do. Okay, so I'll try to give you that kind of insight rather than walk the traditional route of saying this is what the trainings can happen and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's what my attempt will be today. So you get a different perspective, a little bit different perspective about training and development. So primarily, what is this whole approach to training, right? So first, training, and I will talk about it in the next 2 slides. So I will explain the whole concept. The first element about training is always analysis. And analysis is about saying that what is it actually that I really need to train and which target audience. Okay, so what are the learning objectives that I need to create and who needs to actually get those learning objectives and why? So those are the first questions you need to ask yourself. If you do not ask yourself these questions, then it is very, you're doing it in a very tic-tac-toe situation. So you're tick marking in the box. So you could get a performance appraisal done, and somebody, the boss in the performance appraisal will say, Kevin needs to communication skills and leadership skills. And you go ahead and do the training. Now that's one way of doing it, but that is not the way in which you would build a competitive and a sustaining organization, a learning organization. So the very first element is to analyze. Again, coming back to what I said in the last 3 days, that analysis also is important using data. So the HR team and the training team have to look at data. So what are you looking at? Firstly, you're looking at unique roles. Those roles that are unique in the organization. So there could be 5 accountants, but the role of an accountant in singular is unique. There may be 5 people doing the job. So you identify that. Then you look at the business strategy, because everything that we do, right from finance to HR is in the perpetuation of the business strategy, in building sustainability and growth for an organization. So therefore, you look at those aspects or those areas of business that the organization wants to focus more, whether it wants to increase market share, it wants to consolidate itself, it wants to be a dominant player, it wants to bring in a new age technology or new age process. Does it want to be seen as the market leader in this particular area? So what are those aspects and areas? Once you understand this at a high level from the CEO and the CXO, it is then you trickle that down to understanding what kind of skill sets I need to build in the organization so as to have had these business objectives fulfilled. And so that goes into this analysis. Once you have that, and you now know that these are the areas and this is the target audience and this is what they need to get as learning outcomes, you start designing. Okay. And you start understanding, saying that, how am I going to, so believe me, design is not about writing the training program. It's about saying that what kind of approach I'm going to use. Okay. How is the instructions going to happen? Okay. What do I want it to be at the end of it? So that kind of design to be in terms of saying that, how will I implement now that I know what I have to do? How will I implement it in a not just one-off time, as a continuous process? Because learning and development is not a one-time activity. It is a continuous activity. Okay. And so therefore, for it to be continuous, I will talk about a few things in terms of return on investment, etc., towards the latter part. But it is a continuous element, building the philosophy of an organization. Once you've done that, you start developing. And that's when you create the course materials, the prototypes, whether you want to use visual aids, video aids, you want to use role plays and games while you are doing the program. So whatever is your instructional methodology, you start bringing in. Okay. Now, that has to be robust enough. I have noticed that sometimes we make a mistake of saying that if I have to do communication skills or etiquette, business etiquette, how to write emails, how to speak. So when you look at some of those type of trainings, which are generic in nature, we generally try to just take a particular training and start implementing it. I would not advise companies to do things like that. Yes, it gives you a base, but training always needs to be aligned to the culture, the values, and how your people are going to receive that training and then put it back into practice. So examples that you use, the way in which it's going to happen, how you would conduct it. Okay. All these things matter because it is now relevant to that particular organization. The topics could be similar, but how you and what messages you're giving needs to be aligned to the organization. And so a certain element of custom build in the development is required. The also element is who is going to give that training. Very important point, because that person has to exude, one, the knowledge, secondly, has to vibe with the class, and thirdly, people have to respect the fact that whatever input has been given by the particular trainer is going to be taken and made part of your day-to-day life. Okay. Then comes implementation. Now, the implementation is about various things. The implementation is about, as I said, who is going to be the trainer? How is that trainer going to deliver? When is this program going to happen? Okay, is it going to happen bang in the middle of the closing of the year, or it's going to happen at the peak of the business cycle? So when is this going to happen? Because you want people to do two things: focus on the training. At the same time, once they walk out of the room, they have to put it in practice, and the business has to see that result in that financial year. So it's also about where you want to do this training, virtual or physical in today's world. So these are the considerations that you must answer also before you start taking this and putting it into practice. And then finally, once you implement and the training program is rolled out, you also look at elements in terms of how you'd like to certify the person. How would you like that person to feel special, that as an organization, you have invested the time, money, and effort in building this skill into a person. It is also important for the senior CEO or the founder or the MD to reiterate why this is happening and what is the expectation clearly out of each one of them when it comes to taking these particular inputs and putting it into practice. It's very important. Because once that happens, the team is reassured that one, it is serious. Two, the learnings of this are given for a purpose, so they feel special. And the third is they have to get out of the room and put it in practice. And as an organization, if the CEO or the founder or the CXO is saying, I want it in practice, that means they know that there is going to be an environment where they will be able to practice what they have learned. And I will give you an examples of those as we move along. And finally is the evaluation. As we talked about return on investment, it's also very important for you to evaluate whether the training has been really something that you have imbibed in the person. So it's not about handing over. Yes, it is about just one part. One part is handing over a questionnaire saying that, did you understand? Did you know? Did you like the trainer? Was it clear? Was it not? And so on and so forth. Was the material useful, not useful, and so on and so forth. While that is important to get, more important, and as we study a little later in the Kirkpatrick model, I will talk to you about that model. As you realize there, it is more than just that kind of evaluation. Okay, because at the end of the day, you are not putting somebody through a training because you're taking them out of the productive hours, putting them through training, okay, for a specific reason, right? For a particular outcome, right? So is that really going to happen in your organization? Training also is a change. Once you put people through a particular set of training, they will be changing the way they will approach. And so remember, right at the start, in the first day, I told you it's not about the what, it's also about the how you run your business. Training enables the how to happen. And so therefore, it is very important for you to pay a lot of attention and give importance to this whole element of training. So this model, AD model, is what I wanted to share with you at the start to help you understand what goes into this whole element of training. Having said this, so where all trainings really apply, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the next 2 slides, okay? It's important for you to understand how does this training program actually get played out. The first thing right at the start is induction. So induction, yes, my dear friends, is also training, because remember we talked about the concept of must be true. So induction is very critical in building that must be true concept. It is also the first time an employee is coming to understand about the organization, its culture, and its way of doing work, and how is it that they are going to be evaluated and work in the organization. So that is also one form of training. Having said that, in the first 30 to 60 days, the next first things, their trainings are used in 3 or 4 different areas. First, rain shower training, and I will talk to you about that in the next slide. The second is performance improvement plan. So when you do a performance evaluation, as we studied day before yesterday, when you do your performance management, you also come up with a gap in terms of what a person needs to do in that role. And that could be a what, which means a job, which could be a functional, or it could be how, which is the behavioral competencies. Okay. And so that is another area that comes out is a performance improvement plan. The third area is specific skills training. Every organization wants, say, for example, to go through Six Sigma training. So all people in the organization at a certain level who are impacting the P&L of an organization, etc., could go through a Six Sigma training. Now that is a specific skill kind of training. One of those also could be design thinking and so on and so forth. Then comes the area of succession planning. Now succession.
Kevin, I will take 2 minutes.
Yes, Advocate.
I think participants are so thrilled to have this session. Maybe we will plan a physical webinar, maybe start with Bombay, because chartered accountants, when our articles, if we have a 360-degree picture of the business, the production, sales, purchases. And Hemant, you must be there for all the 4 days. Were you there? And Madam Hina, she is not there today. So it's a thank you so much for giving your time, Kevin ji, and look forward more association on this wonderful subject of human resources management. Every forum I tell that this is the first asset. The money, the land, plant and machinery, they come after human resource. Maybe technology, I would like to give a second priority after human resource.
Right, sir.
So this subject, people can do wonder. And sir, carry on. Thank you so much for your time. I just step into to give thanks to you.
Yes, Adokya ji, and I think what you're right, it's important to also do a face-to-face, and I'm happy to help you with that and share what are my knowledges with the team. And I respect the fact that the association and yourself and all of the participants today have actually taken time to understand HR, which is truly amazing. So thank you. Okay, guys. So let's continue. Right, so this is where we were. Okay, so skilling for succession, right? So the other element is about succession planning. And I have a few slides on that, so we'll talk about it. So training also impacts succession planning. And this is an important area, whether it's a small company, big company, whatever it may be, manufacturing, service, etc., you cannot ignore the element of succession. People have a feeling that succession, oh my God, is a big concept, etc. But at the grassroots and at the base level, it is very simple. It's like somebody left and resigned from the job. Who is the person going to take over that particular role? In simple terms. Now that this element of succession has a tremendous magnitude. From there, it actually extrapolates itself all the way when you're talking about CEO and CXO succession. And last is training for a new role. And I'm going to talk about that through some models, some of the models that we've created and done and found successful. So I will try to bring out these areas in terms of the training. Okay, so I'll dive a little more in depth into these areas. So talking about, one second. Yeah. So what is Renshaw? Okay. Now, Renshaw models are typically where an organization gives training to all in that particular function, department, and grade. So let me give you an example. For those in the retail store who are doing work in a retail store. Now, retail store could be anything, right? From your Chromas to Titan to Crossword, Shoppers, anyone. Okay, Landmark, H&M, all your retail stores, including the jewelry retail store. Now, each one of them have what they call their retail skilling model, unique to each one of them, because product and style and everything is different for each one. So there are two theories there, pentagon and triangle, but I'm not getting into that right now. This is not a session for retail. So there are, based on the pentagon and triangle model, which is the models used by retail companies, the training gets designed. That is basically whether you are more a customer focused organization or you're more a give a product to the customer model. So they all have a retail skilling model. And that is like a rain shower. It rains on all those people who join into the organization. That's why it's called rain shower. Like today, Mumbai is enjoying such wonderful rain today. So rain shower model is about training everybody in that role, irrespective of whether you are good, bad performer, whatever the case may be. You must know these things in the company. So as you go on to staff, things like business etiquette, email etiquette, and whatever the case may be related to culture. Remember, we spoke about culture, right? In the very first day. See, all these things are linked. Nothing is kept in isolation. So again, areas related to culture. Remember, I told you about how we do work. So how we do work defines a company. I'm just saying that all of us, some of us have CA firms. All CA firms would probably do similar work. But how you do the work differentiates you from one to the other. Now, all that forms part of that Renshaw model that must be given to everybody. And that defines how that company will function on a daily basis. So that's called Renshaw. It happens from a junior level, mid level. The type of training changes. It includes functional. So in a BPO, there are two types of, there's the functional training, there's the cultural training. So in any other organization, also functional and behavioral. Those are Renshaw. So that is one type of training that happens across the board for employees, including people who are like your security guard and all your contractual staff, housekeeping, every one of them. Because if an employee joins your organization, the first person they meet is the security guard. And if that security guard is trained to answer, it builds the must be true concept and the image of your organization. So training is looked at from that kind of depth and that kind of breadth. The second element is skill gap. Now, skill gap, as you know, is all about a person in a job required to do, so say for example, accountant, a junior accountant in the job, there may be 5-6 people doing the same junior accountant role. All of them are required to do and perform a certain set of activities on a daily, monthly, quarterly, annually, 6-monthly basis. Now, if they are required to do that job, people, 5 of them doing the same job will have a different skill set or different level of skill. So therefore, there may be some with a skill gap. When I say gap, it is not about saying that I don't know to do accounting. No, what I meant to say is that if I need somebody to know accounting principles, and if I rate that person, minimum is 4 on 5. He needs to have that level of competence. But today he is at 3 on 5. Then I have to bring him up to at least 4 on 5 because that's my company's benchmark. So I will talk about competencies in a few slides that gives you, it will help you understand what I'm talking. So if there is a certain skill and I benchmark that skill in the company as saying everybody has to be at a minimum of 3 on 5, then that is your minimum line that you've drawn. Anybody falling below that needs to be given a skill gap training. So it's not about the fact that he doesn't know or she doesn't know. It's just that your level benchmark is little higher than what they are. And so you're bringing them up to the company benchmark. And I would request each one of you to, and those in other in larger organizations to create this benchmark. Create this benchmark in your own department and team in everything that you do, because it will define you. Okay. What you do is important. How you do will define you. The second element is, or the third element, sorry, is growth and succession, as we know. Now, growth and succession, I have a slide on the potential and performance and how you evaluate that. And I also want to give you a model on growth. Now, people think that because I have worked 5 years, 6 years in the company, I'm eligible for promotion. So growth. And so I got the promotion and that's it, over. No. Because if you notice that whenever we get promoted, by and large, most of us as human tendency will try to emulate the guy or lady who was doing the role before me. And whatever they were doing, I will try to do better, or at least that much. Now, if you really go and ask organizations, is that the efficient way of doing it? The answer probably is no, because the expectation of that role that was originally defined, remember we wrote job description, in that we saw critical competencies, critical aspects of the role. We brought in that same thing in the performance and the reward recognition and everything. So those are expectations that is there in that role, right? It's already there. So somewhere down the line, like Chinese whispers, it gets diluted. And the role holder creates their own version of that expectation. So therefore, it is very important to go back to the original and then evaluate whether this Kevin now is got promoted and he is now going to be successful. Remember, we also talked about 50% predictability of success is not enough. It has to be at least 85%. And so therefore, there are trainings that go for growth. The other element is on business strategy. A lot of business strategy needs different kinds of, we talked about Six Sigma, we talked about design thinking, we talked about analytics. Okay, there is also, you get a lot of trainings even on the accounting principles, because maybe today I'm no longer doing only business in India, but I'm doing business in South Africa and I'm doing business in Europe. So different kinds of accounting principles, etc., that need to be imbibed. So all these are trainings that happen because of business strategy. I want to open a new line of business because we see that there is potential over there, but it needs a special skill set from my existing team. So that all that training gets into the business strategy form of training. Then is leadership. Most of us have seen this, the management development programs, leadership development programs. Now, why is it there? It is there simply because the leader is the one who strategizes and leads the organization. He is also, and she is also the person who ensures that the business direction is percolated down to the last person. So everything that a leader does is emulated. Everything that the leader does defines culture. Everything that the leader does defines the what and the how. And so therefore we need to have a leader who is skilled to ensure that they're able to run a certain degree of business. So say, for example, there's a leader who's currently running one, say a 50 crore business. Now that projection is 200 crores. Is that leader then got the skill sets functionally and behaviorally to deal with a 250 crore business? The mindset has to change from being inward looking to outward looking. The magnanimity in which you need to run a 250 crore business versus a 50 crore business and the dynamics along with it is different. And so the leader needs to go through a training to be able to upskill their self in terms of managing self and managing their ability to think large. Okay, and that is why the leadership training. Having said that, now I want to walk you through 2 or 3 ways in which training actually happens. And then I want to talk to you about the Kirkpatrick model, which is very relevant, and no training program can happen without reference to the Kirkpatrick model. So there is training that happens centralized. Okay, and this is very typical of a lot of organizations where this happens at one location, everybody comes in, training is given, dedicated trainers and so on and so forth. You've got a training team, etc. Standardized stuff that is given across the board. Now that is a centralized training design model. Okay, it is used by organizations even today, and it has its ROI. Okay, it has its effectiveness. Okay, and so like, for example, you're doing a sales program for people either in the pharmaceutical or if it is into computers or IT industry, etc. All these things are standardized. So it's a centralized training design. Companies have invested time and money in creating, infrastructure for things like this. So training has already taken center stage in a lot of organizations, especially as they grow and they are, you have a lot of people coming in from different backgrounds. Okay, now let me give you another example. You cannot have somebody who comes inside an organization, say for example, is working in, say Share Your HR, and they come from a Tata company. Now, obviously there's an experience that they have over there, but when they come in to the new organization, they say, oh my God, in Tata, we used to do it like this. Now, when you have things like that, it's also very, very, very important to have been sensitive about the fact that that is an experience they have. But very more important is that we need to imprint on them the new way of Share HR on them, so that that is the way in which they need to function. And they need to add the value by bringing in some of the best practices that they've seen in Tata. So therefore, these training modules are very effective in doing these type of things in the organization. The second is functional training. Now, functional training, Adukya ji just now spoke about factory, etc. So functional training is not limited to only manufacturing. Functional training can be IT on different stack of software, design and coding. For you in terms of finance and accounting, for HR team, etc. There's functional training required. And no department can come back and say that I don't need any functional training. Because at the end of the day, you are moving towards a multi-skilled environment rather than a single skilled environment. So where Hemant, myself, all of us are skilled on the different parts of the accounting function, while we may do our own roles in the department. So it's about ensuring that we are multi-skilled. Okay. And so we can interchangeably do each other's jobs, giving the organization elasticity in the department, a flexibility, and also being able to provide a change to an employee, because sometimes work becomes a little bit monotonous. So therefore, these type of functional trainings are there. A lot of these are customer focused. A lot of these are focused towards, now see, there are, the functional training also incorporates what that role needs to do. So for example, the role of an accounts department interacts with all departments. So the elements of collaboration, the elements of being able to get work done from others, okay, to get the MIS given to you from other departments. How is it that you will take people along with you? At the same time, the accounts department, the finance department is the dashboard. Okay, and they are the ones who will put the picture on the board saying that this is how we are doing. Are we healthy in terms of our business? Are we not healthy in terms of our business? Now, it's also how you give that message. Okay, and you cannot be crude and you cannot be curt when you're giving a message that isn't very positive, because at the back of it, there are a lot of people who've put in genuinely hard work, but maybe that hard work was not in the direction in which the organization wanted it to have been. So that needs a change. It needs a little bit of training, coaching, mentoring. So therefore, these type of functional trainings also incorporate the elements of behavioral part in terms of collaboration, how to give the message, how to do things, etc. So this is another way of building skill in the organization. Okay. And also organizations have used this pretty effectively, looking at like a university or a renowned institution kind of training campus, where the training is taken out of the office environment, out of the into the college setting, into the university setting, and you are given inputs in that kind of environment. It's dedicated. It is so it's like your management development programs, research related programs. So these are some of the things that organizations have resorted to in terms of different models when it comes to training. The fourth one is also the training that is done through outdoor training, right? So experiential learning, and those are quite fun because you are outdoor, you're in, you are collaborating with people, you're doing activities, you're learning stuff, you're physically involved, you're mentally involved, you're emotionally involved, and through that whole process, you suddenly let go of your egos and the label that you carry, that I am vice president of something or I am manager of something. You let go of some of that, and you are now combining yourself with a team with a single purpose, and that purpose could be whatever that particular game is all about. So those have been experiential learning outdoor programs have also become a very wonderful way to bring about change, to bring people together, to bring cohesiveness in the organization. Okay, so these are some of the training methodologies or models that are used in terms of different organizations. Well, finally coming to the Kirkpatrick model. Now, what did Kirkpatrick talk about? And why did he bring out this? And this is something that is very widely used, and a lot of progressive organizations look at this. It is a way of effectively evaluating the effectiveness of a program, okay, of a training. And he's broken that down into 4 levels, okay, seeing that how you are able to look at the way in which a particular concept, training, input, etc. is taken, and it has become a part of something that people are doing on a day-to-day basis. So one of the ways so at the base level is purely a reactive. I learned something, suddenly a situation came, oh, I remembered, acha, ye sikhaya tha, done. Now I react into that and I start bringing it in. So that is one, that's the very base level of saying that, okay, training has got imbibed, but it is reactive. The second is about how it has been able to penetrate your attitude, confidence, and your ability to do work. Okay, so truly now you are started learning. Okay, and your mind is now conditioning or thinking about the fact that, oh, acha, I learned this, I can use it like this in this particular thing. Oh, okay. So you see, your mind is now started learning. the level of your knowledge and your attitude and the confidence changes, because now you got backed up by something that you had a practice that you're doing, but now you got it backed up by a learning input. And so that has become the part of your life. The third is where it becomes part of your behavior. Okay. And remember, as they say, you do something for 3 months, it becomes a part of your habit, right? We've heard that saying. And people use that more when you're going to a gym or you're doing physical exercise and training, or you want to build reading as a habit and so on and so forth. So similarly like that, in terms of training, it has to become a part of your behavior. Okay, when you go back to the job, whatever you've learned has to become part of what you do. And that is how you will start truly impacting what you try to do. And right at the top is, now this has become an element that not only you've imbibed as your behavior, you're constantly using that to modify, adapt, and implement it in everything that you do. So you see how the 4 levels of the Kirkpatrick model, right, from reaction, learning, behavior, and results, are used to track or see the ROI of any stage of training. It could be the pre-training stage, it could be during the training stage, post the training stage. Each one of these areas is what you could use the Kirkpatrick model. So at the base level, you ask some questions. Remember, we all go through training programs and we get asked some set of questions, right? Those are those base. As you go into learning, it's about the first few, the period after training. How is it that they take away and they put that into their day-to-day lives? So it is in the first hour, first day, first week after the training. Behavioral change, remember I talked about 3 months, etc. So it is basically evaluating people after 3 to 6 months and understanding that have they truly really taken that and made it a part of what they do. So if I gave somebody an input on business etiquette, have they really changed? When they pick up the phone, they say, "Ha, bolo," or they say, "Good morning," whatever you have given as an input. That is truly when things have changed. And so you look at that and evaluate that in the span of 3 to 6 months post the whole course has been completed. And finally, when you look at the overall final level of results, is it something that is there even 1 year down the road? Is it something that people are constantly looking and using to achieve their targets, their goals, their outcomes, and they're using that to have displayed to the manager when the appraisal comes or when the reward and recognition is happening, that I imbibed this particular thing and so this has happened and this is how the outcome is. That is how you are truly moving an organization's attempt to be between level 3 and 4 in terms of training. So this is the Kirkpatrick model. I've tried to summarize it for you. There's a lot of detailing in terms of how you actually evaluate and come to know that these are the things that you've achieved at these levels. But that's a subject for another day. Moving from there, I thought it's important to talk about the 70-20-10. Now, not all training needs to happen through programs. In fact, only 10% of trainings need to happen through an external training program. That's a little different, right, from what you're used to. So 70-20. So a lot of organizations have started realizing that training is not easy. Yes, it's an expense. And for all the accounting guys, it is a definite expense on the books, right? And it's also the first one to get looked at in an austerity drive. But if your training module is a 70-20-10, 70% is happening through critical experiences within the organization. 20% is happening through relationships that you have put people into inside the organization. And 10% is happening to programs. Now, the 10% happens when you want to create a specific learning, a new concept. Okay, you want to bring and put it into the minds of some of the people. That's when you use the external training program. But when you want people to learn business etiquette, or you want people to learn communication, you want people to learn certain things, you use the structured program, but by and large, you start putting them through critical experiences. For example, if they are in their job and they are required to do role plays, in the job, they're required to demonstrate this, and that has to be observed by a set of people and evaluated. The 20% is about projects that people come together. So you create a team of people together, give them a project. That project could be something related to their normal work or not. It could be a project that is going to be implemented immediately or is going to be implemented a little bit in future. But when you bring these people together, you also have in your mind the outcome of trainings that or learning, let me not say training, learning inputs that they need to get. And through these interventions, the training actually, or the learning, becomes more and more strong and more relevant. So organizations have resorted to the 70-20-10 model, which is an effective way of building learning in an organization. So learning is not necessarily something that you need to have sitting in a classroom. It is also very, very possible to create those learning environments within your organization. So now it comes back to, remember I said everything is linked, right? You have your culture, your performance, and how you do reward. All these things need to be linked to foster internal learning. Because if somebody has learned inside and imbibed it, reward him. Okay, bring it out in the performance appraisal. The culture has to be such that you're okay with things like this. And you want people to start coming together and learning through projects, learning through experiences where they shadow a particular person. Okay, so there's a good performer. Make that person shadow that good performer, right? And then you will automatically see, is there going to be a change or not? So this is how organizations have effectively used, because in your organization, there are so many people, and each of the people could be shining examples of inputs. You don't have to go outside. So why can't we use our internal resources itself? In each one of them, I have shining inputs, as I say, of competence and functional elements. Why can't others just simply learn from them rather than going outside? And that person could be rewarded who imbibed that training. So he is also, or she also feels very proud that I have managed to do this for my organization. So this is the 70-20-10 that I would like to explain to you. Now from here onwards, my presentation will start talking about specific things that I felt that you could use. And I want to give you specific examples of models and ways in which training actually happens. So instead of talking generic all in the air, let me try to contextualize it in certain ways that happen in the organization. So talent development, remember that was one of the structures that we put of the HR department, right? So talent acquisition, talent management, talent development. So talent development is about, when it comes to an individual, it's about emotional stability, understanding of self, building consistency, and if you see the word there, self-redundancy. Now, the reason why I put that word there is because the more and more you are able to make yourself redundant, the better it is of your chances of growing in the organization, but more importantly, growing as a professional. So I'm not going to focus too much on that, but I think for an individual, it's a lot about building emotional stability, understanding of self, being consistent and efficient. Now, each of these things would have a different input, correct? So emotional stability is not, or understanding self is not about only giving a training program of understanding. It could be about how is it that people are, you shadow them with somebody who's been able to look at different scenarios, work in chaos, okay, and still be able to deliver. Have multiple things happening and still be able to deliver. So those are ways in which you could get people to understand how can they be better at themselves. There are also a lot of interventions that happen. And today, post the pandemic, I have seen, and these are some things that we do also, is complete programs on managing self. Because the pandemic and COVID has actually shaken each one of us in terms of our emotional stability, our anxieties, our stress levels. So much so that we are adverse to the risk taking. And even if we take risks, the level in which we used to take risk earlier versus today is a difference. And maybe that is, the organization wants us to be a little more aggressive in our risk taking ability. But as individuals, we are holding back. The visualization that we need to have in terms of how we can be successful. Because today we have seen and come face to face with adversity, that suddenly overnight things have changed adversely. So therefore, being strong with self is very critical. On performance, areas relating to leadership grooming, design thinking, leadership development programs, which are programs related to strategy, analysis, Because while most of the accounts team and the workforce planning team understand how to do analysis of data, the rest of the departments and teams must also learn similarly. Just a minute. Must also learn similarly. And so leadership development programs need to expose leaders to analysis, understanding data, interpretation of P&L, okay, understanding how is it that when we do a particular action, where does it impact? How is it that we are as leaders? What are the behavioral aspects that are there? And when I say behavioral, it's the competency elements. How is it that those play? Accountability. And finally, all of us as leaders, and if we are CXOs, etc., and you more so, have to be entrepreneurs. While some of you are running your own businesses, but some of you in organizations, each one of us has to look at ourselves as an entrepreneur in that area. So if that's the case, then how is it that we are running and utilizing our resources to the best and the most cost-effective and efficient manner? So these are some of the things that impact performance. I've not talked about performance related to what you do. If you noticed, I have talked about performance related inputs on how you do what you do. Finally, there's potential. And I'm going to talk about talent review, etc., and succession planning. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. I have a slide that talks about this whole element of potential. And performance versus potential is what are the key parameters on the X and Y axis that organizations have used today to ensure how is it that they are going to grow. So I'll talk about that little in detail. Now, this is a model which I wanted to share with you more from the concept. Now, it's actually a simple model of, so the whole idea behind this model is somebody needs to get promoted from assistant manager to manager. That's the simple statement. Now, the question for the organization, and the organization wants to create an 80-85% predictability in the success of an assistant manager as they move to the manager level. Now, if you see here, there are two or three boards. There's potential on both sides. There is fit for growth. If you notice on the other side, there's a role model. And in between, there's training, assessment, and evaluation. Now, why is these things important? So when we promote people earlier, as I mentioned in my example earlier, people who have been in the organization at a particular performance level, so you say good and above, and people who've been in the organization in that role for 5 years, 4 years, whatever norms you have in your company, I'm eligible for promotion. But do I need to be promoted? Because at the end of the day, the organization has to perpetuate. So I must be between a good and a super performer. I cannot afford to be an average to good performer and expect to be promoted. So organizations also are realizing that I cannot please everybody. I have to look at how the organization will start becoming better, competitive, and more flexible, more sharp in the delivery to customer. So therefore, we have to always assess who is fit for growth. Okay. And fit for growth, one of the parameter is a person who is whose performance is between good and super, nothing less than that. Okay. And also who has a potential to grow, and that potential we'll talk about a little later. So one having that, those become the pool of people who are now eligible for any promotion if there's a role. I'm going to keep that aside for a minute. Now let's go to the promoted role, which is the manager. Now, I remember I spoke to you that most people will emulate what the other guy has done, and then they start to copy that, thinking that that is the correct way. The first thing that organizations need to do is define what is the role model. So if I'm promoting somebody to a manager, what is the ideal manager that I want to see from a functional and behavioral aspect? And if you're able to define that in clear terms, now you have a person who's ready to perform, and now you have a benchmark that is clearly relevant for today and tomorrow. And that is the role model. Not whoever was in the role, not whoever was in the role before that guy. Okay. It is not your perception of what it is. It is real what the organization needs. Now, once you have this, what organizations do are two things. Progressive organizations put those who are now eligible for the promotion through what they call graduation school. I call it graduation school just to highlight what it is. During the next 6 to 9 months, there is a training given to all of them. So if there were 5 people in the accounts department who are fit for a promotion to manager, the 5 people go through a program that gives them an idea of how they need to be as a manager. So general training, like a Renshaw model, remember we spoke about that? So now you see Renshaw model happening into a promotion. So they are now given that training, and all of them are put through that. And they still have to perform at that particular level. They still have to be good and great at what they do. At the same time, they also need to spend time on that training and the assignments given for that training. Now, once you have done that, you assess them. And only those, and this is something that you can choose in your organization, only those who pass at not 35 out of 100, at 65 out of 100 and above are people who you will promote. And the highest scoring person through an assessment center is the one who gets the job first. And then the next, who is the next score, and so on and so forth. Now you see how organizations have used training, like a Renshaw model. They have used assessment to ensure that they are assessing people for the new role. Okay, so you do what is known as assessment center, which is the cutting edge technology in terms of HR to get a good idea whether Kevin will be fit for the new role. And then finally, the gaps that come out of the assessment center, because suppose, for example, I scored 85 out of 100, I still have 15% gap. So that 15 is going through a training program that Kevin needs to be a great manager. So you assess, train, and evaluate. Now, when you do stuff like this, you build 80% predictability in the success of the role. Why? Because you have promoted those who are promotable and are best of the best. You put them through a program that help them understand what am I getting to when I get promoted. There is a competitive nature because you don't believe in mediocrity. So you put them through an assessment. The guy or lady who scores the best gets the job. It is not a biasness or an evaluation of one guy or two guys. It is an assessment center done by a panel of 3 to 4 people. Then you give the input of the gap. So now the organization has made that person fully aware of what the role is, gave them an understanding of the role model, gave them input of the gap. So therefore, the predictability of success is definitely higher than what it was earlier in the 50-50 ratio. So this is one such model that I wanted to share with you in terms of how organizations have effectively used assessment, training, and post-assessment training in promotions. Okay, and that is how they have ensured that at least for manager and above, you are doing this. You notice that it is quite a lot of effort. It is a lot of planning. It is not about just tomorrow I need to promote somebody. Okay, yes, organizations will have those scenarios because somebody left and resigned, but you don't jump. There is a caretaker for the role, and then you put this person into that role and run. Because it is more detrimental to the company if a person who is not able to run that job is given that job just because somebody resigned, position vacant ho gaya, now I fitted somebody inside, or I wanted to please somebody because he has worked in the system for over 5 years, 6 years, kya kare? You are creating a challenge. And even if you want to do that, you have to supplement that by training inputs or learning inputs. So this is a very fundamental way of how training is used in organizations when it comes to promotions. In the center block that you are seeing here are basically competencies. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is competency framework. The competency framework is quite a long topic, but a competency framework is nothing but behavioral attributes or skills that are required for a job. Competencies are not done for an individual. They are done by the role or by the level. So junior level, mid-level, senior level, leadership. So you break that up into levels, and you have competencies that are required at each level. organization, it is not only important to write. Sorry, one second. Yeah, it is not only important to just note the competencies like problem solving, logical thinking, numerical. It's not enough to just write that. You have to define it. Define what do you mean by problem solving? What do you mean by logical thinking? What do you mean by numerical ability? And each of that definition is not necessarily one definition, because please remember, at junior level, mid-level, senior, you also have different departments. Okay. And also you have individual performer and a person who is leading a team. All right. Now those two complexities need to get blended in your definition. So generally definitions are not one, definitions are generally 2 or 3 to help you build in or fit in that complexity of department and fit in the complexity of individual and a team player. And then once you've done that, it is not enough to leave it there. It is important that if you're using a scale of 1 to 5, you have to define what does 1 mean and define what does 5 mean when you're evaluating. So what is it that you're evaluating in numerical ability that tells you that Kevin has 5 out of 5? And what it is that you're evaluating that tells me it is 1 out of 5 has to be defined. So if you notice the level of detailing that goes into a competency framework. So the competency framework is actually the base for everything that you do. Base for hiring, base for confirmation, base for promotion, base for reward and recognition, base for succession planning, base for promotion. So it is a base for everything that you do. So it's a one time that you create this base, you keep evaluating it, but it is a solid base, and the combination of functional, which is there in the job description, and the behavioral competencies is a super solid way in which you are now affecting and impacting the organization. So this is the competency framework that I wanted to also talk to you about. So basically, primarily what you're doing is looking at people fit for growth, creating a desired role model, and constantly assessing, training, and evaluating. Now, the evaluation could be through 70-20-10. Remember, that's what I told you about. The gap is there. Either you give 10, you put them through external training, or you please put them through a mentorship program, or you put them through aligning with certain people in the organization, or you create a project group where people are exposed to different aspects that bring out that learning in requirement from them. So bottom line, once you put people through something like this, you are building a successful promotion. So this is a model that a lot of organizations today are looking at, because although it takes time and it needs a lot of effort in its design and implementation, but its outcome is guaranteed. So I would leave you with that, because this is something that is something that you could create for your own organization. Now I will move to a topic of succession planning, because in the whole training and development element, it is essential that one talks about succession planning and what is it that is required from a training element into succession planning. Simply put, succession planning is nothing but to ensure that a role, so a unique role. So firstly, it's a critical role and a unique role. So there's two concepts that you should know. First, key critical position, which is the role. It is not the individual. And then there is the key critical human being, or the person who is in that role. That is key critical resource. Now, I could have two critical resources in one critical position or two critical positions, but the critical position is more important. So succession planning is ensuring that the key critical position is always manned, okay? And there's never a scenario where that position is unmanned. Even if through attrition or growth or expansion, etc., that position has to be manned. So that's what basically succession planning is all about. So the steps in the succession planning include, first, identifying critical resources. If you do not, roles. If you do not identify that, you have not even started with the base. So it's very important for organizations to identify critical roles. So one of the questions is, so what is a critical role, sir? A critical role could be, for example, the leadership roles in the organization. In your accounts and finance team, if it is a company that is already in the stock, in the listed company or non-listed company. So what roles are impacting that from the accounts and finance team are critical. And then of course there's the junior roles, which could be critical roles, but you may have one or two of them. Okay, so identifying critical roles is very critical or very important before even starting any concept of succession plan. Now, once you've done that, you also have to look at success profiles. We talked about this when we did performance appraisal, if you recall. So success profiles is about looking at how is a person or that role holder, what is it that defines the success of that particular role, and what is it that defines the success of people who are playing that role. And that is what is known as a success profile. So if you notice the positive annotation of the word, we're not looking at a job description, etc. Now this is a success profile that is built for each role. And that's a detailed document of how this role is to be played out and how is the success being measured and in what levels it needs to be measured, because everything is relevant, right? Relative. I can say that I need to be good in accounting, but at what degree? Okay, and what degree that needs to be displayed is all that goes into the success profile. Then you start assessing staff, and we'll talk about some of the ways in which those staffs get, you assess people. Once you've assessed people who can play those roles, you create a development plan and you create successors. Now, both those things are little interlinked close together. The first is that if a person is fit for the role in 0 to 6 months, is that person fit for the role in 6 to 12 months? And is that person fit for the role more than 12 months away and up to 24 months? Beyond that, you don't go. So 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 24. Now you put people in that bucket. So say, for example, there's a finance controller is a critical role. And now in the department, you would look at, firstly, you define what that finance controller role is all about. And then you start looking at people in the organization, in the team that can possibly be there as tomorrow's financial controller. Now that person could be there tomorrow because another senior person could be there. Or as I said, 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 24. Now, once you've got that, you also start assessing and seeing whether you create a career development plan. And a career development plan is for the successor. So by and large, you inform the successor. A lot of organizations have debated, should I inform the person that he's a successor or not? Well, you can inform the person that you are a key critical resource, and a key critical resource will be definitely put through a career development plan for succession. Yes, there is that debate that people feel that once I tell that person, now you are going to be a successor, it goes to the head and creates further complication or different types of complications in the mind of that junior. So but I definitely say that you should inform a critical resource that they are a critical resource. And it's important to do that, even if there's a risk of that person leaving and joining somewhere else. But so long as they're there with you, important to identify that you are a critical resource and I will be doing things for you specially because you are a critical resource. And I will do it specially only till you are constantly a critical resource. The day you drop your performance or etc. and you fall out of a critical resource, I will let you know that. So see, you are building an organization that is on meritocracy. It's not on somebody just feeling that I am there or not there. So career development plans. Once the successor is ready, by virtue of the career development plan, you review and see whether that person has to play the role in case of that vacancy. Now, I will talk about it as we go along in terms of what happens if there is really no succession. The guy above never left. Now people have gone through the career development plan. They all know their critical resources. What should a company do to keep those guys happy within the organization for indefinite period of time, right? Because you don't know when that role is going to come up. So there are things that you do to ensure that you are doing your best to keep everybody in the door. Okay. So some of the steps that you follow. First is the plan is always in a positive note. Okay, it is never reactive. oh my God, acha, ye abhi hua hai, so now let's do this. No. Then you are just finding somebody to fill the role. A succession planning is a thought through process that happens over a period. Okay, it is not something that happens just as an ad hoc. The candidate is pointed out. It is not somebody in the air. If you don't have a candidate, then always have a caretaker, because your succession planning could also include somebody who's outside the company and is not inside the company. So during that time, that person joins or comes from a group company back here into this role, there is a caretaker. So identify the caretaker, identify the person who's external. If it's internal within the team, super. If not, the successor could also be from outside. But let that successor know that they are the key critical resource. Okay, have the development plan in place. Also ensure that you are testing it when that person is given. Suppose there is a requirement, okay, for the finance controller to do. You also involve that guy who is going to be the successor, just to check and see, will they have the skill to act in the same particular manner? Okay, and that gives you a proof that you know that the person is capable to step up into that role. So use these things to judge and to see whether you are able, that succession planning, if activated, will be successful. The succession planning also needs to dovetail into your hiring strategy. Because if somebody is leaving and you put in a succession plan, you have to replace one position that will get vacant anyway. So whenever you're doing that, or if the successor is external and not inside the company, it all leads back again to a hiring plan. So if you activated the successor from inside, when they move into the new role, there is a vacancy, and you will keep having a vacancy till you reach a place where you need to hire from external. So the hiring strategy is important to have dovetailed into this. And finally, you have to think about your own succession plan. So all of you on this call, it is important for you to look at your own selves and say that, am I being able to make myself redundant? And who is going to be that successor? Because the moment you are able to make yourself redundant, you've opened yourself up for something larger. And you're given an opportunity for somebody below to take over this so that you are able to do something much larger. So any business, whatever small, large, big, cannot run without its key critical positions unmanned. And therefore, the succession plan is extremely critical when it comes to organization's growth and development. I use this even in our own organization, no matter how small we may be. But it is important for us to at least identify and have a plan of action in place. Okay, in the event of it actually getting implemented or actioned, at that time you action it out with all faith and trust in yourself that you have created this succession plan. Now remember, we talked about performance versus potential, right? In the earlier stage, and we talked about fit for today, fit for future, fit for tomorrow. And I told you that I will talk about that later. Now so this is where we discuss those areas. All organizations are constantly trying to understand who in the team is fit for only today, fit for future, and fit for growth. Now, again, the fit for growth and fit for future is an element or a factor of the business strategy, business growth, the business focus, where the business wants to go and how it needs. So that business plan is one that is driving these elements. Okay, so remember, everything has to correlate to the business. If the business grows and perpetuates itself, everybody grows. So the reason why you look at fit for today and growth and future is because you want to look at who are your star performers, who are your people who are high in terms of potential and performance, who are your people who are your core players that you want to have, and who are those that either you need to train or ask to go. Yes, I'm making a tough statement on this call simply because it's important from an organization standpoint to have faith and belief to improve a performance of a person. But beyond the point, it is also a hard call. So wherever there's a risk, you got to ensure that you are taking mitigative stances to take care of that risk. Either that mitigation is improvement or that mitigation is a hard call, but that answer has to be done. Because as an organization, the more and more you perpetuate the risk, you are creating lower potentials and lower degrees of performance. You're allowing mediocrity to creep into the framework. So this is a 9 blocker that organizations have used successfully, keeping potential and performance. Now you all understood performance, right? And we all understood how performance gets evaluated. And that is very simple. But potential is about a discussion that the department head has, or the supervisor has with the department head and the HR team, looking at what are things that that person has displayed in terms of either being able to take higher responsibility, or doing the work in an efficient manner, or doing that work with a sense of ownership and self-initiative. Okay, how is this person taking initiative to learn concepts that he did not know or she did not know earlier and bring it into the job? How is the diligence happening? Okay, in terms of, does that person really demonstrate, if today I was a individual performer as an accountant, and tomorrow I need to lead a team, have I displayed elements of my ability to lead a team through my behavior? Okay, am I a person who is curt and rude, or am I a person who's able to take a team along? Okay, am I able to put my point across? Okay, so all these aspects are looked at and discussed while defining potential of a person. So you're constantly looking at the green and the yellow areas here on the screen, where you're looking at those who are star high potential high performers. Okay, you're constantly looking at this block, and then you're constantly looking at those who are even your potential gem solid performers, your core players as they call it, because these are guys who are solid in your team. Okay, and you need them because not every time you have to have all of them who are high flyers. There are also guys who are rock solid, and they are going to be there no matter what you throw at them. They are super, and those guys need to be identified because they are fit for today, they're fit for tomorrow, but the other three are fit for growth. So it is important to know this. And the red guys are, as I talked about, important to understand what you want to do. Now, let me talk about the first two aspects. Now, a lot of organizations have looked at these two. And if you remember, I spoke about, right, it's not only about promotion. Remember when we talked about compensation for the green belt of people who are your key critical resources, occupying key critical positions, they are generally paid around the 70th percentile or to the 80th percentile of the market. Your compensation strategy is based on that. The potential core players are 50th to the 65th percentile, and then the lower guys are where they are. So I think it is important that your compensation strategy also is linking to this. When you're giving ESOPs to you're also looking at these elements. The value of the ESOPs or the quantum of ESOPs is different as you look at these levels. You look at the growth in terms of the role they are going to play. They are part of high projects. So it could be that there's a project worth 20 crores versus a project versus 5 crores. So some of these green guys are part of those 20 crore projects. So it's also gives an opportunity to the company to know who should I put in my key projects. Okay, so it is because that is very critical to the organization. It will catapult that organization into another level of its being known in the market. So this is your reward and recognition also is linked to this particular aspect. So you reward leaders, you reward the star performers through the reward and recognition program. Companies have also gone to the extent of creating differential benefit for key critical resources. Let me give you an example. If everybody got, say, on a good performer, got 8% increment, high key critical resources will get 10 to 12%. If a mediclaim policy for a normal guy is 5 lakhs, for the key critical resource, it could be 6 lakhs, or it could be 5 lakhs with additional benefits. So you see how things are different, right? Because these are the guys who are consistently putting in extra efforts to have been where they are with the organization. And so therefore need to be recognized and rewarded and grown in that similar manner. So one standard paintbrush, a concept is now out of the window, because you know that the pot of money you have is limited. You know that the ability for you to train and grow people also limited. So who do you give it to? This is how you actually start strategizing and figuring out how you start distributing and taking care of these guys given limited resources of money and capability and so on and so forth in your organization. So this is a very key 9-blocker, this thing, when you look at training, when you look at development and growth. So I wanted to share this particular piece with you because you can use it to evaluate your own teams, your own self, in terms of how is it that you're seeing yourself in the organization. So with that, I'm going to pause and thank each one of you for giving me this opportunity here today. And I will open myself up to any questions that you may have. The questions could be related to today, or you may have questions that you probably have in your mind on the first 3 days. Happy to answer to the best of my ability. Thank you so much. Hemanji? Okay. I don't know whether Hemanji is there. So there are a few questions that have come up. Now, are there any softwares? Yes. There are a lot of LMS that are there. Some of them are not very expensive, but I would, so Gurukul and a few, there are a lot of Pathshala, there are a few LMS systems there in the market. You can pick and choose, but more importantly, go with the content that makes more relevance to you. Okay. So, so when you're looking at a structured training program in a CA office, develop your people not only in the skill of the trade, but develop them in their ability to put their point across, communicate more strongly, look at how you would like to see them go into the market and talk to your customers and elements like that. Their analytical abilities and all those competencies that you want them to, kind of develop, problem solving competencies, decision making competencies. So look at all that and choose the LMS with content that is relevant. The LMS program also, software, since we're talking about this, also gives you the flexibility of doing a course in your own pace. So you could start the program, pause it, and then go back to it after some time and so on. So you can set a time frame for employees, like they must complete it in 1 week's time, etc., so that they're able to do it at their own time, sometimes not necessary also always during office time. So they have that flexibility, but more importantly, it also gives you an opportunity to let them know that they have to complete it. So you're tracking it, and those who don't complete it gives you an opportunity to go back to them and ask them, "Kya hua? Why?" So LMS programs, softwares are kind of available today to do that. And if you have an HRMS system, there are some HRMS systems that also have LMS built in or aligned to. So we have something like that. But if you have, then use that. You don't need to go through another learning and learning software. Human resource of merger. It is well-known fact that in a merger, employees of amalgamating company get stepmotherly treatment, and no sector is an exception, even tech in the recent past. So, no, you're right. I have actually seen in some places the reverse, to be honest. I've seen, but those are rare. But you're right. It is not so much the stepmotherly treatment. It is more that the company that is buying, and and I know that primarily it also the two conversations that happen, right? The first conversation is the money transaction, the rate. And once that is agreed, the second important conversation that happens almost immediately is who's going to take care of what portfolio. So always the company buying would like to promote its persons in the organization to have led larger projects and larger responsibilities and so on and so forth. And that leads to a little bit of dissonance, and it also leads to a huge element of change in the organization, and that gives you this feeling of stepmotherly treatment. Because once that person comes in, then you have their own people also who also come in. But a good HR team, and that is one of the things that we talk a lot to HR teams when we help them with mergers, is that the post-merger integration or the pre-merger blueprint and the post-merger integration is fundamental. Because if you are not, it's also about giving the tough message in a good manner, right? Because there are some fallouts, and while there are some adjustments that people get adjusted into different roles, but there are also fallouts, right? So for example, you can't have two CFOs or two HR heads. So it's also about being able to manage the post-merger integration in a very smooth and effective manner, and the success really is there. And there are different methodologies and different ways that you need to deal with this, because at the end of the day, it's a human being, and that human being has put in efforts. Yeah. So what if that company is merged? But all those years they have put in efforts to build that company who's getting bought out. So that respect element needs to be maintained, that care needs to be maintained, and there has to be a plan. You cannot just leave it and say, "Theek hai, ye hai, this is your fate now." That's it. So a lot of progressive HR teams take care of this piece. I hope I've answered that question. Hi, Majid. I think there were two questions that I took the liberty of answering.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for answering the query, sir.
If there are any more, if there are questions, please feel free to ask.
I think we are done, sir.
As you say, sir.
Yes, Krishnakant ji, कुछ बोल रहे हैं?
Yes, sir. But there is no queries.
हाँ जी?
No queries.
Okay, okay.
So you can end the session
Perfect, perfect.
if you want.
So on behalf of our committee of our institute, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks to our guest speaker for this series of webinars over the past 4 days. We are grateful to our distinguished and learned guest speaker, Shri Kevin Dias, for not only sharing his invaluable time for us over the last 4 days to grace this occasion, but also for enlightening us with his commendable talks on the subject. Thanks a lot for enhancing our understanding pertaining to human resource management and labor laws. You have indeed put the best of your efforts to make this series of webinars a memorable one. Thank you, Kevin, sir.
Thank you so much, Hemanji and the team and all those who participated. I'll always be there to guide and help anybody who needs. My coordinates are with the team. And if we at Share HR can be of any help to you and your companies, etc., do let us know. And thank you so much for being patient with me and going through these 4 days. I know that the subject matter sometimes is a little heavy because it's new and also lots to cover. But I really truly appreciate, as I said, and I'm humbled to be with all of you. And truly thank you and hats off to each one of you. God bless and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kevin, sir. And also, I also thank all the delegates who have attended this webinar for being such an amazing audience. It was a pleasure to have you with us. So with this, we conclude the webinar. Thank you all for attending. I hope all of you have had a great time. Thank you so much.